When this kind of thing happens in a way that is not coordinated, many people's first exposure to the MyDigitalID would be one whereby the system sucks. Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about politics and public policies in ways that are relevant to you, the person on the street. My name is OKM or Dr. Botak, and
I am Peter, Mr. Money.
Thanks so much for all your support. We've gone over 26,000 subscribers already.
That's right.
And I think the last few episodes have been pretty decent. The most recent episode, just before this, we were talking about Penang. And some people commented that I was airing dirty laundry of the party in public and veering away from public policies. I just wanted to take the opportunity to answer or respond to this question, even though I already gave some indications or explanations as to why I was doing this. I comment on these things, Peter, because I know that the politics that are happening behind the scenes impacts the handling, the communication, and the implementation of public policies. And I'll give you an example. If, let's say, there were people in the Penang state government among the Aduns, for example, within the same coalition that was actively undermining the effectiveness of the chief minister, right? Wouldn't that leave a negative impression or negative mark or even have negative consequences in terms of the effectiveness of the chief minister to carry out his policy? Definitely, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so, I know this for a fact. People have told me this, and I verified with others as well, that these things were happening, right? So that's why, it's important for me to raise these issues up, to let you know about the internal politics and how this affects the running of the Penang state government. Hopefully, things will be a bit more stable now that the elections in DAP Penang has been, conducted, and the results are quite good, I think, for the long-term, development of the party. And then at the same time, when I bring up the possibility of people having or leaders having certain personal issues, right? It has got to do with how these personal issues affect their public performance, right? So if, let's say, I'm not really interested in your personal life in terms of, who you are dating, or who you are quarreling with, and things like that.
You smoke, that kind of thing. Nothing to do with that.
Those things are your own decisions. If, let's say, whatever you do, doesn't affect the way you perform, the way you work, and on the most part, I think most people would be able to separate the two, then it's none of my business.
Yeah.
Right? But if, let's say, there are certain personal issues that you have that affects your ability to function as a leader, as a member of the state or federal government, and people know about this, I know about this, others knows about this, then I think it's fair game, right? Do you think that would be fair statement to make?
Yeah. Actually, in fact, I think to say there is an airing of dirty laundry, I don't think it's fair. Personally, I mean, you can say that I'm biased because we started this podcast together. But that's no point, right? You see, I think that within every single political party, there are a lot of things that can affect how a country is being run. And those internal politics ultimately will affect how a state or a country being managed. And to say there is an airing of dirty laundry, I disagree, because none of it is a personal attack. If you're talking about a personal attack, it's a different story. And number two, for example, do we call 1MDB an airing of dirty laundry?
Okay.
Now,
yes.
When it's at a criminal level, then we call it whistleblowing. But you do notice that every wrongdoing should ideally is not to be wait until something wrong that you blow, right? There should be some sort of a
warning,
yes. And it depends, right? So if, let's say, this warning could have been reached out at a more internal level, then it should have happened.
And then certain actions are taken, remedial actions. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that from what I've seen and from what I read from comments and hearing from different parties as well, a lot of the things that you mentioned are actually pretty much open secrets. It's not even that secretive, right? but it's just like, you just help people kind of connect more of the dots. Like, this is related to this. Yes. Pretty much that's the case. But did you actually really reveal like some dirty laundry? I know you did not lah.
Right? I don't think I did.
So I don't think it's fair to say that.
I think you made an interesting point about 1MDB, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we go into the publication of a book called Behind the Stories by The Edge in conjunction with their 30th year of being in existence as a newspaper. If, let's say, somebody were to have said, oh, okay, Rosmah and Jho Low, they're very close, Jho Low invite all these celebrities to go and come to Malaysia or to perform for Rosmah and all that. And this may be a negative indication of who Rosmah is as a person and all that. If, let's say, you just stop at that, that means Jho Low is doing this out of the goodness of his heart because he likes to, network and all that kind of stuff. Then I would say this one is sort of like airing personal information without any bigger story to tell.
That's right.
Right? But we know life doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right? And in this case, Jho Low did all these things to get close to Rosmah as a way to getting to know and to earn the trust of Najib as a MO1 or PM, and this was the genesis of how the 1MDB scandal started, right? So I'm not saying that what I add or what I discuss with regards to what's happening in DAP in Penang is anywhere close to 1MDB. I'm just saying that there are reasons to talk about certain things that affects the effectiveness of a political party and also a government that is run by a political party or coalition. Right?
Yeah.
So talking about effectiveness of running the government, let's go to the first topic, hot off the press. The first topic is this announcement that was made earlier this week on an app which I believe most of you would already have registered used, which is the JPJ app.
That's right.
So JPJ app, let me just ask you, Peter, are you registered on the JPJ app?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So you use it to sort of like check up on your driver's license.
That's right. Yeah.
To see the
also when
expiry
I
date.
changed my car at that time, bought my car plate, stuff like that lah.
To check that the road tax is okay. The insurance is up to date.
That's
and
right.
Things like
It's
that,
something that I'll log in at least 1 year once.
So maybe even probably more regularly if you have more than one vehicle.
That's right.
Some people even have like couple of cars, couple of motorcycles. That everything has got to be logged into the JPJ app. What happened was that somebody detected that the JPJ app had suddenly a pop out earlier this week on the 30th of September, on Monday, if I'm not mistaken, which said that everyone has to sign in using MyDigitalID starting on the 10th of October. Compulsory. That means you cannot log in through your previous method already, which is already established in your own phone. Most people will use their phones. Some people also can log in through their website. So when this story came up, I thought, hey, something is wrong here, because then I went to check on the app lah. Memang there's this pop-up, and I found that to be very troubling because I know that many people would not have registered for the MyDigitalID app, and I'll explain what this MyDigitalID app is lah. Right? And true enough, when I read through the comments in social media, on Twitter, on Facebook and all that, many people were complaining. And the complaints are, wide-ranging, saying that, hey, how come I have to apply for another app to register into an existing app where it functions fine? I can already access the app through whatever login I already have. Why do I have to use this MyDigitalID, right? So before we go into the government's reaction, how did you find out about this story? Was it through the WhatsApp group or some other means?
I found out over a dinner. So then you guys were talking about it, and also because you sent it in our WhatsApp group lah, right? Yeah. So the more I found out was over our conversation later. But when I saw that at the time, I was quite shocked lah.
Why were you shocked?
I mean, what has it got to do with these two things, right? That's the first thing.
Came out from left field lah.
Yeah, it's like kind of the blue, It's like you're driving straight and then suddenly a car just come out of nowhere and
langgar you.
Like, whoa, what's happening, right?
About?
Yeah, and the best part is that there's not even a traffic light there, right? Or even a junction there, right? These fellas just cross over the curb or something.
Yes.
Because even if you tell me these two things are going to combine, also not so weird, You need to log in here in order to log in there, right? That's the weirdest thing ever.
You're trying to create a solution to a problem that wasn't there.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So okay, let me be clear lah. I'm not against the MyDigitalID or the National Digital ID. I actually think that is quite an important tool to have, important app to have, because when we look at what happened in other countries, notably in India as well as Singapore, when you have a national digital ID, you basically have what we call a single sign-on or single login, SSO for short, whereby if let's say you log into this app already, you have access to this app, you've done all the registration.
Yes.
Anytime you want to access a government service, all right, anytime you want to allow even private sector entities to access certain records that you have, your own consent, meaning if you want to let banks have access to information so that they can do eKYC, that SSO and the software and the systems architecture behind that would be very, very useful.
Yeah.
Right. So in Singapore, for example, for kids above a certain age, you have what they call SingPass. And you have information with regards to your HDB application being in there. You have information about your NS, your national service stuff being in there. And one can imagine that this could be a platform by which you can access things like your Sumbangan Tunai Rama applications, even allow people to have access to your tax record. If let's say this is coming from an accounting firm that you trust and whatnot, right? So the digital ID sort of like the
idea
function
and the
function.
concept.
Yes, the concept and the function is actually very useful.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, but when you do this kind of thing suddenly from left field, right, whereby you introduce this new app or new SSO that most people don't know about, you force them to try to apply for it or to sign on, and then suddenly they are not prepared, you will have a situation whereby for a majority of people who would have been sort of like exposed to MyDigitalID for the first time, they will try signing on and they will find that the whole thing is not usable or not workable.
That's right.
So let me ask you, Peter, prior to hearing about this MyDigitalID and JPJ app, were you aware of the existence of this thing called MyDigitalID?
No. We were told that there's gonna be something like that, but we didn't even know that it has already launched. That's one thing, right? And then I get the concept. I think it's a great thing and would love to see it happen. But now you're talking about two very independent functions. Unless you're telling me that these two things are going to combine into one, I think it's fine. But at least launch it first. Or maybe I'm just not very updated with the latest launch of things.
Okay.
But yeah, you get what I mean, right?
Again, to give our listeners and our viewers a bit more of an explanation about the MyDigitalID, right? The apps are not supposed to merge. MyDigitalID is not supposed to merge with JPJ. What is supposed to happen is that when you, let's say, sign on to your MyDigitalID app, it is supposed to give you access on the back end automatically to the JPJ app. You only have to sync once and then you'll be able to get in.
That's right.
It's just like how now, when you open your JPJ app, you don't have to log in new login all the time, right? So that the concept should apply for the MyDigitalID for other government services that you want to have access to as well. And the government has already done a few sort of like so-called backend integration with this thing called Hermes or HRMIS, which is the HR tool that is used by civil servants to manage their leave and claims and all that kind of stuff. So my sense is two things. Firstly, the ecosystem or infrastructure to register for the MyDigitalID has actually not been stress tested. Meaning, if let's say you have a whole boatload of people wanting to go and do your IC verification so that you can register as register for your MyDigitalID, right? The system may not be able to cope. And that's exactly what happened. Because once the announcement was made, people started registering. I did as well. I went to try. I couldn't. The day after this announcement was made, the whole system crashed.
That's right.
When this kind of thing happens in a way that is not coordinated, right? Many people's first exposure to the MyDigitalID would be one whereby the system sucks. I cannot register properly. The eKYC does not work. And you already have a negative impression on the MyDigitalID concept already. So a concept that was good, suddenly it becomes, exposed. And not only that, we were not told or it was not explained to us what are some of the security protocols around this MyDigitalID, which is key for things like eKYC and access that you want to give to your information later on.
Yep.
Right? So I could not have thought of a worse way to really announce the fact that the MyDigitalID app is open for registration now than this. Because previously, there was a soft launch. They got the Prime Minister and some other ministers to go and register for the digital ID. The UI UX sucks. This was, this app was developed by Mimos. They are the sort of like app owner at a cost of 80 million ringgit. Right? They got people. They got an external vendor to come in to do the software side, the UI UX, and then they got some people to go and buy some machines to do the physical verification.
Wow.
So you can see already that system itself is not very well thought of. If you wanted to give priority to something that's as important as the digital ID, right, you should have used a whole of government approach. Have a proper announcement, design good use cases on a pilot basis to onboard people, to get and stress test it first, and then give an option. Use the MyDigitalID to see whether you can sign into the JPJ app, for example, and this can test the back end integration of these two apps, right? So all these things, as far as I know, wasn't done. Then you suddenly have this announcement pop up like that, right? So it was to me, it was a public relations disaster. It was also I think, technical disaster because people started to try to log in and they couldn't. Try to sign up for the MyDigitalID, but they couldn't. And yeah, I mean, we saw the consequence of all these unhappiness, which was at the end of the day, 2 or 3 days after this fiasco started, or 2 days rather, the Transport Minister had to come out, Anthony Low had to come out to say that, look, we're cancelling this whole MyDigitalID thing for now. You can log on same as before, using whatever means that you already use. And we'll make sure that the back-end integration between MyDigitalID and also the JPJ app is done well first, before any of these, further, announcements are made. And I hope, it won't be made mandatory anytime soon. It can be sort of like done on a voluntary basis.
Why did it suddenly pop out of nowhere? There was no announcement, no nothing. It just suddenly just happened. How can it happen that way?
Okay,
and JPJ app is under Transport Minister, right?
Okay, so the way this whole thing, sort of like started, including in terms of the design of the MyDigitalID and the jurisdiction, is very, very confusing. If I explain to you now, and I will, you probably need a few rounds of explanation before you can really understand. And you may not also. So let me try to explain to you.
Okay, cool.
So MyDigitalID was designed by Mimos.
Okay.
Right? And Mimos, they were more known for jarring, for having their own small IC, fab, semiconductor fab. They're not really known for software development or app development. Yep. But somehow somebody managed to convince, the PM to give them 80 million to do this.
Right.
Mimos is an agency under the Ministry of Science, Technology and Information, MOSTI.
Okay.
The minister is Chang Lee Kang.
Yep.
But the project owner of this specific MyDigitalID project is actually sitting in the Prime Minister's office. Right? So you have this agency, Mimos, under MOSTI, but the ownership of the MyDigitalID is under PMO.
Under PMO. Okay.
Right? And then you have another ministry called the Ministry of Digital. Okay. That is supposed to consolidate a lot of the digital initiatives. But they have no say or no oversight over this digital ID project. There's no minister who's actually overseeing this project from a punca kuasa standpoint, except for the Prime Minister. Because the PMO is the one that's managing this particular project.
Right.
So from a management standpoint, I think it's all over the place. Right? To me, it would be much easier and also much more structured if you just shift the entire MyDigitalID project to be parked under the Ministry of Digital. And then you have the ministry and whatever unit that you want to establish under the ministry to handle this.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Because I think Mimos has done more or less what it can do already with regards to starting the app. Right? So that's one thing. Second thing is, this is my educated guess. I don't think Anthony Low would have approved for JPJ to make the sign on for the JPJ app through MyDigitalID. I don't think he would have approved it if he had known about it. And if you look at the way he communicated during the press conference to say that they were cancelling this MyDigitalID initiative, right? He was trying to say he support the MyDigitalID initiative, but the back end needed to be integrated first. And he said, after the cabinet meeting on Wednesday, post-cab and all that, I contacted MyDigital. What that tells me is that he was never told in the first place, right? Because if he was told in the first place, why does he have to contact MyDigitalID again? Meaning, JPJ got instructions, probably, educated guess, from PMO to say you need to do this MyDigitalID.
Or whoever the project owner was.
Yes. It's under PMO lah. Under PMO. Somebody in PMO. I don't know. Maybe the JPJ Director General got a call from PMX himself. I don't know. I mean, again, educated guess lah. That's why they felt they had to move so quickly. Meaning, they even bypassed the minister.
That's what I was wondering. How on earth a JPJ app will do it just out of the blue, right? Yeah,
without the minister even knowing.
Because Anthony Loke always seems to be the kind of person who's very
hands-on
and very organized.
Yes.
Yeah, when he do things, it has to be step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay, we're gonna get there like that, right? So it's very unlike.
Yes, it is not his style.
Yeah, not his style. Yeah.
And you must remember, Anthony invested a lot of his own political capital to convince the people to say that you actually don't need to bring out the physical driver's license anymore. You don't need to, even have a physical road tax anymore, because everything will be on the app.
That's right.
Why would then he want to shoot himself in the foot by saying that, you cannot sign on the way before, you have to sign on using MyDigitalID, which is not stress test. You're shooting yourself in the foot, right? Which is exactly what happened when this pop-up notice was put out in public and the public reaction was so negative, right? So I'm not sure whether this constitutes airing dirty laundry or not, but I'm trying to explain to you the fact that the government did not coordinate with each other, did not sync, did not actually make sure that everything was well planned and well managed before something like that was announced. And what happened is that the minister himself, Minister of Transportation Anthony Loke, had to come out with a public statement to basically U-turn on a policy that one of his agencies announced, in a way that was very, very not well organized. So, I hope this gives you at least some idea in terms of how government works. Questions still remain. I think the MyDigitalID problems in terms of systems architecture, in terms of the back-end linkage and all that, those are still there. And maybe just one final point lah. The thing about the MyDigitalID or National Digital ID, right, is that it has to have one component that is currently missing from this app, which is you need to have at least one case or one time of physical verification. What do I mean by this? You already use your IC for things like registering for digital bank, doing verification, including some entry level eKYC for things like your Touch and Go app. But there's no physical verification, meaning it is on a trust basis between you and the app that you're using. And this is all private sector entities, right? So you can say accuracy maybe 80%, right? 80% in terms of matching your face with the IC and all that. But to have a national digital ID whereby you need that kind of security, you need that kind of authenticity, you need that kind of verification. It's not just single sign-on using the app alone, You need to be able to go to a place, a physical location, where either your biometrics in terms of your thumbprints or your facial recognition, your iris recognition, something like that is used to verify it for the first time. Right? And that hasn't been done. As far as I know, it is not within the current ecosystem of the MyDigitalID structure. Right? They only have about 500 machines or kiosks where you can do some form of physical registration if, let's say, you don't know how to do it on your phone. So this is actually a major problem. And I think if, let's say, we had thought about all these things beforehand, have a proper launch of the National Digital ID, right, then you wouldn't need to do things like a different PADU registration, a different Budi registration. You can actually just use the National Digital ID to sign on, so that can be a point of proving of different information to be accessed by other parties. And also, if you feel that the app is secure enough, to put in whatever information that you think you want to store in that particular app, or to be able to be populated by other government agencies who have access to that app.
So, just one last question also. MIMOS. Maybe you can refresh our memory a little bit on like why MIMOS? Yeah, and what's the relevance of MIMOS? Right? And also 80 million for this. Right? Was there a tender? Was there anything? Was there
no tender, because it is a government decision to give that money to MIMOS. As to whether MIMOS had a tender for the vendors to develop this MyDigitalID, I think they did. But as to the quality and the process, I can't really say lah. But for those of you who still can remember, older folks like me, the younger people here in this room probably won't remember. MIMOS was started in the 1990s, and they started something called jarring when we had dial-up. To connect to the internet. You still can hear the you still use your phone jack to get hook into your computer, right? So, and they did some hardware stuff. Like I said, they have they spend money during Mahathir's time to build their own semiconductor fabrication plant, a small one, right? Which I don't really think it functions right now lah. So, after the multimedia super corridor and new prime minister came in, starting with Pak La, MIMOS has basically been left on the wayside, right? And it's an organization that's looking for direction. I'm not quite sure whether it's still relevant today, but somehow the management team or somebody in the board managed to convince the prime minister to give this money, not just to MIMOS, but also to use this as a way to park the National Digital ID under Prime Minister's office, which I disagree with. Because Prime Minister don't have time to go and manage these kinds of things. His office is involved in so many other things. Might as well park it under, like I said, the Digital Ministry. Especially since you created one after December last year with the new minister, Gobind Singh. Right? So I think, hopefully in the next parliamentary session, the backbenchers, whether it's from opposition or from the government side, will ask more relevant questions with regards to this MyDigitalID. And I've given you enough material. If those MPs, from any political party want to have more information, you know how to reach me. I'll be more than happy to share my views to you guys.
Right.
All right. So we'll stop here for now, and then we'll come back. Second segment of this episode. Be right back. Welcome back to the second segment of the Are We OK podcast. Some people have been referring to the podcast as AWOK.
Yes.
AWOK.
That's true. AWOK.
Yeah, not Amok.
Not Amok.
No, AWOK lah. AWOK like cook a wok like that lah.
Tao Choi.
Yeah, so speaking of Tao Choi, I think if let's say people were importing ingredients from overseas, especially over the past 3 months, they would find that the price of imported goods would have decreased quite a bit.
That's right.
Because the ringgit is the best performing currency in the past 3 months.
That's right. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
So you can still remember, earlier this year, around March, April, it was close to 4.8. Now, the highest it went was a couple of days ago. On the 1st of October, it went up as high as 4.1 something. 213.
Yeah.
Right. So, appreciation of about 14-15% in 3 months. Right. So, to me, positive news. But, from the perspective of Mr. Money, how do you think this would be sort of like seen from the business perspective?
Oh, definitely got a lot of things to say about this, right? I think number one is that the general thing that you're going to see in investment is that people import things to sell, traders, right? In other words, like probably steel company, that kind of things. You are likely going to see a good margin. Likely going to see a good margin. Yeah. But for people who are exporting stuff, it's not going to be that great.
Okay.
Not going to be that great. You're going to see a squeeze, 14%, at least in this case.
We'll come back to the negative consequences first, but maybe you want to tell us more about other positive things that can result as a...
Number one, inflation supposed to come in check. It should end up translating to at a consumer level. Kind of savings, right?
Lower imported inflation.
So I think we can see for iPhone, right? It wasn't that expensive this time around when it launched, right? And especially when MNCs who actually have immediate retail control, I think those are the areas that we're going to see a lot of positivity. Yeah.
Or even those, that are involved in global supply chains.
That's right.
They import a lot of intermediate parts.
That's right. Yeah, right. B2Bs, that kind of things. Yeah, we're going to see that. But I think I do have quite a lot of negative to say, so we shall wait for that.
Okay. Yeah. There are many positive things that I think we can say about the increasing value of the ringgit. I think from the investor standpoint, this will also be seen as a vote of confidence in the Malaysian government and also the Malaysian economy. Investors won't be afraid of thinking that, hey, if I bring in my money into Malaysia, the value of the ringgit will continue to slide, and that will mean that the value of my investments will go down. When I denominate them in the US dollar. So there's a lot of this kind of positive impact. We'll come back to the politics of this later on.
Yep.
Let's focus more on the economics part first. Peter, you said you wanted to say a couple of things about possible negative consequences. What do you talk about that now? Maybe starting with the exporters.
I think starting at exporter is that you're going to see reduce in terms of profit, or even revenue. Yeah, that's the number one, because exchange rate is low. It's better for Malaysian ringgit right now. So what happens is that the amount that they sold in USD will not be as high.
Ringgit will be less. Yes,
it'll be less. Now, but the positive side of it is that chances are they're gonna remittance back the money to Malaysia more lah.
Hopefully, if they want to invest more in the country, expand their business here.
Slightly higher interest rate in the sense of hopefully, if they estimate it to be continue to go down in the US, then they may want to keep their money back here, right? So that's the good side, the positive thing. But on the other end of it is also on a consumer level. Right. On the consumer level, why do I think that it is a bit of a 50-50 play, and why they specifically mention MNCs is because MNC who have they control from upstream all the way to down is fine, right? They get to earn from there. But what we are seeing right now, generally, especially in the normal daily life kind of stuff, you will see businesses who actually manage to get their stuff cheaper already. They're not going to reduce the prices for consumer. It's going to remain the same. Like, for example, the Wantan Mee auntie, which I like to always say, right? She's still going to charge me 9 ringgit and 50 cents. If I today go and tell her, hey, auntie, it's supposed to be cheaper already. Auntie will tell me, hey, you think my other things not more expensive? And the next time, she's still going to increase in the price on the name of festive seasons.
so prices are sticky downwards.
That's right. Now, so that it leads to the other thing. Because on the economic level, it's supposed to, if everyone is working in a logical sense and competitive sense, means that it is supposed to be cheaper, therefore people are more willing to expand, and with that expansion they're more willing to lower their price, and then it should normalize, right? This will be the slower one. On the other hand, businesses who earn more because of this, are they going to be increasing the pay of their employees more? Because all these are not governed by law, but rather governed by
market forces.
Right? Yeah. So then the question is that if everything works well, people's salary are supposed to increase, but at the same time, prices will be more competitive and slide down, and therefore reaching that normalization point. But
you're saying that won't happen, lah.
I'm not saying that it won't. I'm just saying that the future inflation next year will catch up back before it come back down, lah.
Okay. I think from a general finance or economics perspective, as a business owner, you would not be welcoming of any changes in the exchange rate that are too sudden and happen in a very short period of time.
Yes.
Whether it is the depreciation of the ringgit or the appreciation of the ringgit.
That's right.
Obviously, the depreciation of the ringgit is worse because your costs, especially imported costs, goes up very quickly, and you don't have the time to hedge. Right, but at the same time, if let's say the ringgit appreciates very quickly, like what has happened over the past 3 months, there can also be other kinds of impacts. So we talked about the pricing for the exporters already, but there could also be things like, I'm hedging.
Over-hedged already.
Yes, you're over-hedged already, meaning you were hedging for a certain range, and now it's gone over the other side already. Right, and suddenly you're finding that my hedge positions are not that profitable.
That's right.
So these are some of the unintended or negative consequences that can come about, and I think what I want to also bring up is the fact that when the ringgit appreciates so quickly, politicians should not, and this is the politics side, politicians should not be so quick to go and boast about this accomplishment, because it has not much to do with individual politicians or even the Minister of Finance or PMX. And the reason is because there are external factors that are coming into play now with the expected cuts in the US, with the cut and maybe even expected further cuts in the US interest rate. But if let's say something happens domestically or externally, if let's say, the US Fed decides or signals that they may not have a second rate cut, and that suddenly becomes an issue, or if let's say people see the Malaysian government is not willing to introduce petrol subsidies and the budget comes out, nothing is mentioned of that nature, then suddenly the markets will react, and then they will suddenly, ringgit go down again, right? And we've seen a little bit of this happen. It went from 4.13 to 4.2 yesterday because of some geopolitical issues that are outside the control of the Malaysian government or Bank Negara. Then so that's why we should be quite skeptical or very careful if let's say I was a politician. Especially those with economic portfolios, right? Shouldn't go out to boast so much.
That's right. Here's what I think is really, really interesting, right? It's like when Malaysian ringgit was weaker at the time, we were trying very hard to explain, not just us, but even politicians themselves were trying very hard to explain that Malaysia economy is doing well. It has nothing to do with Malaysia economy. It is purely because
interest rate differential.
And then all this geopolitical stuff, right? So you're not taking responsibility of that already. Then suddenly when ringgit strengthen, suddenly you come and take credit. So now you got an issue, So you are also indirectly owning that was your problem, right? But anyone who actually understands economics will know that this has really got nothing to do with
not much.
Not much, right? And I would say the speed of strengthening, yes, has to do with our economy in terms of maybe it wouldn't have been so fast if Malaysia economy wasn't doing so well. But my position, I think, not so much as a politician or not, but I think for someone who actually understands economy, should not be too involved. Should keep an arm's length of this subject matter. Too many variables already.
Correct. And you leave it to Bank Negara governor, to go and explain. Maybe, I think the second finance minister knows these things better. He can try to put it in a positive way, in a more technocratic kind of explanation. But for the others that really want to go and make this into a political message, I think they should be careful, right? So wanted to go and bring this up.
So in fact, I think that this is actually the best time that you educate the people on what really is happening, so that if it goes the other way around, you explain it when times were good. Because when you explain it when times are bad, you're just it looks like you're trying to run away from responsibility.
Correct.
So, but when things are good, right now you say, see, I told you, it really got nothing to do with us. But we did play a good role in in helping Malaysia economy grow. And so if, let's say, really things take a different turn, right? You can always say, I told you already.
Or if, let's say, you really wanted to take credit, what I think the Malaysian government should do is, given the fact that the circumstances, the economic landscape is actually very favorable now to Malaysia, lower inflation, appreciating ringgit, FDI coming in, foreign confidence in the Malaysian economy and political stability, all prices also, stabilizing and coming down a bit. It's the perfect time to introduce petrol subsidy targeting.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so if let's say you introduce this, before the end of the year, and the ringgit further strengthens, then you'll be able to go out and say, hey, this is the credit that I'm taking.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
And if let's say some of that money can be channeled back in a more targeted way, so that the B40 and the M40 can be more than compensated by the extra amount that they have to spend at the pump, can be a win-win situation.
That's true.
But unfortunately, I've heard news from certain sources to say that the Malaysian government, the Prime Minister and some of the key people in cabinet are not very favourable towards petrol subsidy targeting or petrol subsidy rationalisation. So
really?
It may not happen. It's not likely to happen anytime before this end of this year.
Okay.
And it may not even feature that prominently in the budget. Or if let's say if it's in the budget,
that's interesting.
It may be something that they may only consider doing later.
But But wouldn't this be a good time to do that? Because Malaysian
To me, it's a no-brainer.
Malaysian ringgit is strengthening.
Yes.
It's actually also cheaper for you to implement it at the same time in
Yes.
all perspective.
In some ways, yes. So especially also because the petrol prices are also coming down, and even with some of the turmoil that's happening in the Middle East, the expansion of the war involving Israel and also now Lebanon, prices are still okay because I think the markets have priced into the fact that even with Iran sending some missiles over there, it won't escalate into a very serious war that will affect petrol and oil prices lah.
Yeah, I think it should be implemented because maybe it's a little bit out of topic, but I think it should be because you're already on a winning streak on a lot of by-election at this point.
Yeah.
It means that people are accepting that this is part of the idea. If now you slow down, you bring it up again later,
Yes.
it's called finding for trouble.
So I just have one additional point to add to this, which is if let's say the government does want to introduce this targeted petrol subsidy, right? One of the key sort of like instruments may be used, or at least has to be explained to the public in terms of how it's going to be used, is the PADU database. A lot of effort and money has gone into building that database, and if let's say it is at a usable stage, then it should be used. But if let's say the PADU database is not usable, meaning there are a lot of data gaps, and also the methodology in terms of wanting to give out the targeted subsidies has not really been decided yet by government, what kind of formula you want to use, I think this may be one of the reasons why the government has not implemented and may not want to implement the petrol targeted subsidy anytime soon, right? And remember, all these things also ties back to what we were talking about previously with regards to digital ID, databases, information, cybersecurity, public communications, and I know it's all pretty complicated, but I think this is what the cabinet ministers are there to do. The ones who are supposedly smarter and more capable, they should have more responsibility in terms of trying to communicate and implement this policy.
I think it's quite simple at certain places. I think they just need to gather all this money spent on all these different apps, put it into one app. I think you can get one very functional app at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, possible. Yeah, with the right people and the right agency. Yeah, but that's another story. Okay, so we close the chapter on the ringgit and the petrol subsidy rationalization, and then we'll come back for the third segment of this episode. Be right back. Third segment of the Are We OK podcast. All right, Peter, I want to show our audience this book, this very thick book. It's called Behind the Stories. And it was published in conjunction with the 30th anniversary of the founding of a paper called The Edge.
Yep.
I know that you've been recently reading The Edge more and subscribing to it as well.
Yes.
Before I go into this book and the 30th anniversary and also the event that I attended, from your recent reading of The Edge, how do you find that publication?
The Edge is The Edge. Yeah, it's always the same style. You want to go in depth into Malaysia businesses. You want to hear a very neutral position of what they really think. It's a food for thought kind of paper. Yeah.
Probably the best business newspaper in Malaysia.
Yes, definitely we can say that. Yeah, definitely we can say that.
Very good journalists, good insights, good interviews.
Yes.
Well-written pieces,
Yes.
not just on business but also on government policy.
Yes.
And also they have a very good, I'm a bit biased but a very varied op-ed section. This is the opinions editorial.
Oh yes.
I myself am a contributor. Now even when I was a member of parliament, deputy minister, now as an academic. So different viewpoints that are presented there.
High quality very high quality.
Good quality. I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate The Edge, especially the owner, Tan Sri Tong Kui Ong, and also the editor-in-chief Ho Kay Tat for sticking to their guns. Right? Sticking to their guns, not just in terms of wanting to produce good quality paper backed by very, very high journalistic integrity, but more more importantly, for sticking to their guns through the entire 1MDB scandal.
Yeah.
Right? For those of you who may not know, The Edge, or can't remember, The Edge was actually banned for 3 months.
That's right.
When they were at the height of the 1MDB scandal, when they were coming up with stories after stories implicating the Prime Minister then, Najib Tun Razak. At the end of the day, the Prime Minister's office couldn't take the heat anymore, and they decided to take action and said The Edge couldn't publish for 3 months.
Yep.
Right? So, I've read the chapter of this book detailing what happened during the 1MDB scandal. Right, and I think this is the first time that the owner Tan Sri Tong Kui Ong has published and made known his own experience and his own approach towards covering the 1MDB scandal as the owner, together with Ho Kay Tat, because they had to work very, very closely together in terms of making sure they had the necessary evidence and the right pathway to address this issue. Right. So one thing I wanted to sort of highlight to our audience, and maybe also to let Peter know, since you probably would not have covered the details, are not aware of the details of the 1MDB coverage. What Tong Kui Ong revealed in chapter 6 of this book is that he actually went to Najib when he had sufficient evidence to implicate Jho Low in the 1MDB scandal, in terms of how he took money from the Malaysian government, from 1MDB itself, and then basically channeled it through different bank accounts that were controlled by him or his associates. And he laid down all this evidence in a private conversation with Najib.
Oh.
Because he knows Najib,
Yep,
and he actually likes Najib. He said that in this book, and in conversations I've had with him as well, he's expressed his admiration for Najib because, and I would agree with him, Najib is actually a very smart guy.
Yes, he is.
Very astute, knows economics probably better than any prime minister in Malaysian history,
He's a smart
including
guy.
the current one, right? So, Tong saw him as possibly a transformational prime minister. And he did not want the 1MDB scandal to derail some of the good things that he thought Prime Minister Najib was doing with his government transformation program, with his economic transformation program. Yes, there were gaps here and there, but the direction, I think, he felt was generally one that was positive for the country. Opening up, KPIs, effectiveness of the government,
Yes.
blah, 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 right? So that is why I think it's important, for people to realize that even after Tong had given all this information to Najib in person, and I think through his writing here, Najib understood what Jho Low was doing, right? And what Tong said was that Najib was willing to close down 1MDB. He was willing to close down 1MDB. But Tong pushed him a bit further. Tong asked for him to arrest Jho Low and to throw Jho Low under the bus. And that means to basically implicate Jho Low and say that this is all Jho Low's fault. That was when Najib showed him the door. It's all inside.
Right.
All inside
Wow.
Right? So that was sort of like the beginning of the kind of break in the sort of like line of communications between Tong and Najib.
Right.
And there were other attempts by Najib's people, different people or associates in his ecosystem. At first, they tried to talk nice, tell Tong that actually, all this is above board. Jho Low is a nice guy. And in fact, Tong actually met up with Jho Low. It was reported in this book. I know he said it, right? And Jho Low tried to placate him and say that, all this is above board. These are good investments, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Right? But of course, Tong being a very experienced operative, being a very experienced analyst, he knows that all this was, bullshit, right? And he basically, said, okay, we'll go by whatever evidence that we have. And in fact, the evidence that they got was from this guy called Xavier Justo, who used to work for 1MDB.
Yes.
And managed to extract a lot of documentation and also evidence from 1MDB, which was the basis of what The Edge published. Right? And I think this story needs to be told. And, the fact that Najib knew about these things and yet he didn't put a stop to it, that basically weakens whatever defense that Najib may have, either in the courts or in the court of public opinion, to say that it wasn't his fault. It was all Jho Low. So this this, I think, is an important contribution to show that that's not the case.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely worth reading. I'm not sure when it'll hit the bookshops.
So these you got this exclusively right now.
Yes, it's autographed by
Tong himself.
by Ketan and Tong. Dear Kian Ming, trusted to tell the truth.
Oh.
So this was the tagline for the event that I attended recently, which was a luncheon to celebrate the 30th year of The Edge, which was attended by many high-profile corporate figures, and also the Sultan of Selangor and the Sultan of Perak.
Oh wow.
And the Sultan of Selangor actually made a speech as well. Right? So that's sort of like a public appearance to maybe support what The Edge is trying to do, what it was trying to do, and what it still is trying to do with regards to trying to tell the truth. Right? Okay, so I want to maybe delve a little bit deeper and bring you guys behind the curtain, right? And talk about the response of the current unity government to the continued revelations of the 1MDB scandal. Because recently there were two individuals that were named in this book, Tariq Obaid as well as Patrick Mahoney, two key individuals in this Petro-Saudi entity that was used as a conduit to basically launder money from 1MDB. And they've been tried and convicted in Switzerland, right? So, neutral court and all that kind of stuff. And again, it's all because of 1MDB linked activities. And The Edge is still publishing it, giving it good coverage. But I'm not sure whether you sense this or not. The response towards 1MDB related issues on the part of this government, this unity government, has been very, very muted. Do you get the sense?
It is quite obvious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think that that's the case?
I think from what I've heard is that on UMNO especially, there's still quite a big group of Bosco supporters. Yeah, and because of that, there is this thing where you do not really want to poke the bear too much, especially in this kind of situation right now.
So what you're trying to say is that people in PH, including Anwar himself, including leaders in the DAP, some of whom were very vocal about the 1MDB issue when we were fighting against Barisan Nasional and UMNO against Bosco in the 2018, specifically in the 2018 general elections. Suddenly, because wanting to maintain the peace within the unity government, on 1MDB issues, very, very quiet already.
Yeah, I think I'll just put it this way, right? In a sentence that was said, kind of paraphrase it in this way. Even people who want to say something about it are not saying much about it because they feel that if they were to say anything about it, it also makes it inconvenient for their other colleagues who are trying to do something on the bigger scale. So they just choose to not say anything.
Maybe with just one caveat, I would say that maybe Rafizi Ramli, has been referring to the 1MDB case now and then, even
yes,
in his current role.
He does.
Right? So to remind people of what happened at that time. And, even recently, there was an appearance by a person by the name of Eric Sito on his program, Yang Bakar Menteri. And Eric Sito happened to be the real name of this guy called Lim Sian Si. Right? So Lim Sian Si is basically a moniker of a guy who was defending Najib throughout the whole 1MDB scandal. He is one of the people who manages Najib's social media, especially on the more technical side, economic side and all that. The fact that he was ready to make an appearance publicly and have his name associated with Lim Sian Si in Rafizi's podcast shows to me that the effort to continue to try to whitewash what Bosco did with regards to 1MDB is still going on. That means people within the Najib ecosystem is still trying to say that Najib didn't do anything wrong. It was all Jho Low. Maybe Najib made some administrative mistakes here and there, but he was not complicit in what was happening or what happened in 1MDB. Right. So I think this is an important note to make because The Edge is still publishing news and still trying to make these details known to the public. But the political sort of landscape has changed quite a bit. And what this means is that the people who were criticizing or trying to highlight the 1MDB scandal has suddenly become noticeably quieter.
Yeah, I guess this is what it means by towing the lines, right?
Towing the line and, I leave it to our readers to judge on whether maintaining government stability, maintaining the stability of the unity government, is maybe more important than wanting to, cover old ground. I would say that it's still possible to highlight your sort of like attention and also your concern about 1MDB without necessarily jeopardizing the stability of the unity government. Right. So I just wanted to take that time to, come out to, thank The Edge for their coverage, and basically to sort of like end this segment with a line from the concluding chapter from this book, which is written by Ho Ketat, and he ended by saying, "We have taken the road less traveled and will continue to do so, as it is a more fulfilling journey despite the rough patches along the way. The Edge, long may you run." So long may you run, it is a play on words lah. Long may you run means long may you run in terms of having the energy to continue your journey. Secondly, from a print perspective, long may you run, meaning your print continues to run, right? So, they were banned for 3 months.
That's right.
Meaning the printer couldn't run lah.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and then for me personally, when you say long may you run, I'm also quite happy lah, because I like to run lah. So very meaningful, and thanks for inviting me to be part of your journey as a opinion editorial contributor, and also at your recent celebration together with many other dignitaries. So congratulations and long may you run. Welcome back to the final segment of the Are We OK podcast. We've covered a couple of issues, and I wanted to end with just a brief snapshot of the Mahkota by-election results or analysis. This seat was won by BN UMNO with 78% of the vote and a very large majority of 20,000 votes. But despite this victory on the part of UMNO, there were some tensions that were revealed between UMNO and DAP lah. And this was sort of like I think reflective of the ongoing tensions that still exist in the unity government between UMNO and DAP, whereby
right.
I shared a post with you, Peter, this long post by the former MP for Pulai, a friend of mine, Noh Jazlan, who basically took DAP to task in a very sarcastic way lah, right? Saying that, DAP very kacang putih or kacang for them to get the Chinese voters to turn out to support the BN candidate. It's just like their tentera kacang merah or their red bean army, right?
That's right. As I was reading it, also I was like, is this praise or is it a compliment or is it?
He's trying to be sarcastic lah. And I think what he is saying is basically reflective of the thinking of many UMNO grassroots and maybe some leaders that feel that they have been wronged by the DAP in the past lah, whereby DAP has attacked UMNO, which is why in the past many of the non-Malay voters did not support UMNO. So now that DAP is together with UMNO in the unity government, it should be very easy for DAP to convince the non-Malay voters to come out to support UMNO lah. And I think for those that did come out, I think more than 80% of them voted for UMNO lah, right? But I think the point of contention among some UMNO leaders was that the turnout rate for the non-Malays dropped more than the turnout rate for the Malay voters. So overall turnout was about 53%, drop of about 4% compared to the state elections in 2022. Not a very big drop, but still something that I think UMNO people wanted to harp on for their own political purpose. And this is sort of like taking you behind the curtain. Basically, they use this as an excuse to say that DAP didn't do its part, which means that if, let's say, anyone in the DAP or PH says we should use this cooperation to form a unity government in Johor, and maybe even to contest in the next general election using a unity government ticket, I think many people in UMNO are quite skeptical of that. Yeah. So any thoughts, based on what you've read?
Based on what I read, I think that it is quite surprising, but it's not too surprising as well. I just feel that Malaysia politics, we should come to a point that we should start maturing because we have already come to a point to actually understand that moving ahead, there won't be so-called big majorities. It's always going to be a coalition really. Very likely. Yeah. And so it means that this time is going to be true when people say in politics, there's not going to be forever friends, forever enemy.
There's no permanent friends, no permanent enemies.
You just have to embrace the fact that the politics is just part of the work, and But maybe always is like that. It's just that these are all the front-facing stuff, right? Maybe at the back he would have a coffee with Teresa or something like that.
I actually think that things have changed.
Yeah?
In the sense that exactly what you say, because no one coalition can expect to be as dominant as BN was before.
That's right.
You have to start playing the game differently.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
That the game in terms of how you want to cooperate with others, how you want to position yourself vis-a-vis other parties and coalitions, and also the internal game within each party and also within each coalition. Right? Because for some of these UMNO leaders, right, who are maybe more outspoken against PH, against DAP, their calculation may be that, if I'm going to work with PH in the next general election and avoid three corner fights, right, it means that UMNO has to give up a lot of seats, right? So if you are asking us to give up seats, maybe I cannot contest, right? So I rather have a situation whereby I want us to go alone, or at least publicly posture that we want to go alone, so that I can have a higher chance of contesting. Or even if, let's say, UMNO is signaling that some leaders are putting pressure on UMNO, their Supreme Council, to say, hey, we need to use this Mahkota by-election, our sort of like strength among the Malay voters, to tell PH, hey, we can go alone, and if let's say you want us to be with you, you give up more seats, right? You give up more seats, then at least easier for us to talk. So it may also be this kind of bargaining position that some of these leaders are trying to sort of like navigate.
So complicated, man.
So complicated, which means more content for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to end on that note. I think whatever tensions that existed before with regards to UMNO Youth Chief Akmal Saleh with DAP, including Teresa Kok, who has not announced that she's not going to sue him. I think the lawsuit will still continue. Those kinds of tensions, I think, will still be there. We saw an example of how this tension was communicated when Bung Mukhtar, the UMNO chief in Sabah, straight after the election results in Mahkota, came out to say that we should have a similar BNPH arrangement in Sabah itself, right? So that you can avoid three corner fights, you can work together, and of course for him, he knows UMNO cannot win the state elections by itself. It needs PH, so that maybe he stands a high chance of becoming the next chief minister, right? So that is his game plan. But one of my friends in the DAP, Chan Fong Hin, the MP for Kota Kinabalu and also Deputy Minister for Commodities, came out to say that, hey, yeah, we can consider it, but UMNO must make sure that they do not have these kinds of very ultra or very racial kind of spirit or statements. I think he's referring to Akmal.
That's why I feel, right, if a politician is supposed to mature better now, they should start focusing not on creating hate speeches, but in putting more effort in showcasing two things. Number one, they are able to do work. Number two, they are able to work with anyone. Yeah, because if you move ahead, whether you create hate speech or not, okay, fair, just to gain some sort of brownie points. But ultimately, the chances are no one will want to cut myself to help you. I can help you, but it's not going to be that point where I'm going to start giving up too much of my position of strength just to help you, right? So chances are it's always going to be a three-corner fight, and chances are you will need to work together. So the person who may actually invest so much to create that hate towards the other party to actually take away some of your strength, right, will not be the guy to be voted into power and then put in important position to actually work with another party. Because suddenly you'll go against your own principles. Like if I'm the guy who keeps saying that DAP is my worst enemy, and then tomorrow, even if I win the election, we reform a new government in the next one.
I don't want you to be in cabinet with me.
Correct. How can I be in the cabinet? And if I be in the cabinet, and the best part is I want to make a great joke out of it, I make you and DAP one minister, one deputy. And then now suddenly you have to, actually they are our best friend. You will look like a clown immediately.
Imagine if, let's say, Teresa is the minister and then Akmal is the deputy.
Correct. So in my opinion, right, actually I think if anyone want to play smart politics at this point, it is to avoid being that backbencher, to be responsible to bring this up. This will be your most short-sighted political mileage moving ahead already.
And then maybe more generally speaking, don't delve into personal politics,
That's
personal
right.
attacks.
Yeah,
right?
just focus a lot more on the ability to do work. Even if you want to attack another person, attack on the basis of work.
Yes, or maybe on the
Right.
basis of policies.
There's a basis of policy.
Right.
Nothing to do with like, those...
No, like what we talked about, the announcement of this MyDigitalID, JPJ, right?
Right.
I mean, it's very clear, the people who were making noise about this were the rakyat, netizens, I contributed a
Right.
little bit, and then some other people who are, in this
Correct.
ecosystem contributed.
That's
the,
right.
the opposition is, nowhere to be seen, nowhere
right.
to be found.
I think that's why they should come to your course. Learn from history. You will find that in every single political battle, right, that I noticed, right, and change of power, right, the person who's the loudest will usually not be the majority people who actually took on the cabinet post are never the loudest people.
They're the people who are maybe doing work quietly.
Yeah, and then suddenly they are, this guy is the deputy, this guy is the minister. And yes, there will be that few prominent leaders that were also very loud. But that whole bunch of sidekicks who made the most noise, I do notice that
They will be left out.
they'll be left out. Because I mean, let's be honest. Yeah, you became the first guy who go and created all this problem for me. A lot of people have just hated you along the way, and now my role has changed. I need people like me. It doesn't make sense that I keep you around in that manner.
Yeah, so I think that one is food for thought for us to discuss further down the road as we examine more policies that are linked to certain ministers or deputy ministers and the implementation, and also those who make a lot of noise but don't really talk so much about policies. All right, thanks so much for your support, and we'll see you next week.